Welcome to Wednesday, What If, by the Storyteller. What if Wednesday Addams was a witch, just like her ancestor Goody Addams? What if Wednesday was called upon by Goody when her powers started manifesting a year earlier than in the original timeline, and she met Tyler before Miss Thornhill, a.k.a. Laura Gates? Like, comment, and subscribe to be updated. Chapter 3 Pilgrim World. Tyler's perspective. I'd been looking for Wednesday for the better part of the afternoon. She'd disappeared into the park, and, well, it wasn't exactly the safest place in town, especially when the mayor's kid and his crew liked to hang around there. A lone figure standing near the entrance, staring at something with that usual disapproving frown of hers. Before I could make my way over, I heard voices, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. "You've got to be kidding me." Lucas, the mayor's son, and his two goons, were already closing in on her. "What are you doing here, freak?" Lucas called out with a smirk, his friends flanking him like they always did. Wednesday didn't even flinch. "It's none of your business," she said, her voice sharp, colder than usual. I saw her eyes narrow, a look that usually meant trouble for whoever was unlucky enough to get in her way. One of Lucas's friends stepped forward, chest puffed up like a rooster. "At least you're not ashamed to say you were beaten twice by a girl," he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. Wednesday didn't respond. She just sidestepped the first punch like it was nothing, her movements so fluid, so calculated. I watched as she launched into a brutal counterattack, taking them down one by one. Her precision was unnerving, the kind of calculated violence that made you rethink whether you were ever really safe around her. I decided it was time to intervene before she accidentally broke someone's nose. "Wednesday," I called, stepping up behind her. "I've been looking all over for you." She didn't look back, not even when I spoke. The fight was over in a matter of seconds. Lucas and his crew were sprawled on the ground, nursing their bruises. I couldn't resist. "Come on, Lucas," I said, turning to the mayor's kid. "You really want word to spread that you got beaten by a girl twice?" Lucas shot me a furious glare. "Whose side are you on, Tyler? Don't tell me you're refusing to hit her just because she's a girl." I didn't bat an eye. "Do you want your dad to know about this?" I asked, my tone flat. Lucas hesitated for a split second, then scoffed, signaling to his friends to get up. "Whatever," he muttered, before they all walked off, clearly defeated. Wednesday gave me a death glare as she dusted her hands off, the faintest trace of annoyance flickering on her face. "I told you I could handle them. Or do you just want to extract my undying gratitude?" I didn't flinch. "If you dealt with them any longer, you wouldn't be able to find what you're looking for. The park's closing in, like, 30 minutes. Artifacts are at the meeting house. Come on." I didn't wait for her response before I started walking toward the park's exit, assuming she'd follow. She did, though she wasn't thrilled about it. "Why are you helping me?" Her voice was sharp, questioning, but there was no malice, just suspicion. I shrugged, nonchalantly holding the door open for her. "I feel like getting into trouble." Her eyes narrowed, clearly unimpressed, but she stepped inside anyway. The meeting house had that eerie, museum-like atmosphere, dusty old books, faded portraits on the walls, and dim lighting. We moved through it slowly, each of us surveying the artifacts as we passed. I wasn't really paying attention until something moved, something that shouldn't have. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, my heart nearly stopping. A dismembered hand, a sentient hand, crawled out of her bag like a damn pet and scuttled up her arm, eventually finding its way to her shoulder. "What's that?" I asked, unable to keep the shock out of my voice. "Tyler, this is Thing," Wednesday said flatly, as if a disembodied hand was a perfectly normal thing to own. "Thing, this is Tyler." I blinked in disbelief. "Is he your pet?" The hand responded by flipping me off. "He's sensitive," Wednesday said with a dry tone, still focused on something else. I wasn't sure whether to be disgusted or impressed, but all I could do was stare at the little hand, still hanging off her shoulder like it owned the place. "Okay then. That's definitely a thing," I muttered. She gave me a look, something between annoyance and indifference. Just focus. Look at that painting. I turned my attention to the painting she was referencing. I'd been in this meeting house countless times, but the painting was new to me. Whoa, she kinda looks like you, I pointed out, staring at the woman in the painting, a short blonde-haired figure in old-fashioned colonial garb. Wednesday paused. Her voice was tinged with something like reverence. Her name is Goody Addams. An ancestor of mine from 400 years ago. One of the first settlers who came here from Mexico and founded this town before Joseph Crackstone. Wait, I interjected, frowning. Joseph Crackstone is Jericho's founding father. History is written by the victors, Wednesday said, eyes narrowing as she stepped closer to the painting. Everything that's written down should be taken with a grain of salt. We're only told what they want us to remember them as. Not who they actually were. I hadn't expected that kind of response. But as I looked around the room, the reality of her words sunk in. The artifacts in this room weren't just old objects, they were pieces of a hidden history. We moved to another display case, and Wednesday's eyes lit up when she spotted something. She crouched down and gently opened the glass, examining the item inside. Is that what you're looking for? I asked, watching as she carefully handled the object. Yes, she said, almost to herself, her tone satisfied. This is definitely the long-lost grimoire of the Addams family. I raised an eyebrow. So we're done here, right? Let's go, she said, glancing around to make sure no one was paying attention. She grabbed the book and tucked it safely into her bag. As we made our way out of the meeting house and toward the park exit, I couldn't help but ask, so when's the fencing tournament? 2 weeks from now, she answered, her voice flat. They all keep asking me to attend fencing practice. I raised an eyebrow. You're still doing that? Didn't you say you weren't interested? Not really, she said with a small shrug. But they've been pestering me. I decided to change the subject. Oh, about your classmate who got expelled a few days ago. She glanced over at me. The one who tried to choke me to death with his telekinesis? It's hard to keep track of all the people I've offended since I got here. I really should start keeping a record of it. Speaking of records, I said, my tone dropping slightly, I found your dad's old police file from when he was at Nevermore. You want it? I could give it to you next time we meet. I got my learner's permit, so I can drive. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Tonight at 8 o'clock. Kill your lights. I smiled, sensing that I'd somehow managed to gain her trust, at least a little. See you then. As we walked back through town, the weight of the grimoire in her bag felt heavy on my mind, but something told me that this was only the beginning. Wednesday's perspective. I slammed the door shut behind me as I entered my dorm, finally escaping the world for a moment of peace, or at least, as much peace as one can get when one is surrounded by constant chaos. The grimoire sat on my desk, its ominous weight pulling me in. I picked it up with a practiced hand, already feeling its power hum under my fingertips. I flipped open the pages and began to read. The words blurred together as my vision shifted, and suddenly, the room around me seemed to dissolve. A vivid image sprang to life, Goody Addams, my long-dead ancestor, standing over a man, Joseph Crackstone, the founder of this cursed town. The scene played out in my mind like a nightmare. Goody's face twisted with rage as she raised a blade high, striking down the man who had caused so much suffering. His blood mixed with the earth beneath him as she sealed his soul away, trapping him in a curse that would last for centuries. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving me stunned and breathless. The realization struck like a lightning bolt. Someone was going to try and bring Crackstone back. Someone was going to resurrect the genocidal pilgrim. I shut the book with a snap, the weight of the information sinking in. What do I have to do to keep this book from falling into the wrong hands? I muttered to myself, my voice low and dangerous. As I closed my eyes to think, I could almost feel Goody's presence in the air. It wasn't just a lingering memory, it was as though she were still watching, guiding. Then, as if responding to my thoughts, a spell appeared in my mind, clear and direct. A way to preserve what I had read. A way to stop someone from ever getting their hands on it. I took the book in both hands, my fingers brushing the edges as I felt the power of the magic surge through me. Goody's voice echoed in my head, soft but resolute. Burn it. I set the book down and began drawing a pentagram on the floor with chalk, each line sharp and deliberate. 5 candles, one at each point of the star. My movements were automatic, practiced from years of studying rituals that most others would never understand. Once the pentagram was drawn, I sat cross-legged in the center, staring at the flames flickering in front of me. With a steady hand, I took the candle closest to me, the one that had been placed directly in front of the book, and set it aflame. De Cineribus hac scientia numquam delebiter. The words left my lips, flowing with ease, and the book exploded into flame. The paper crackled and burned, turning to ash in mere moments. I watched as the ashes fell, collected them into a mason jar, and sealed it shut. The book was no more. But the spell had worked. The knowledge, though, still remained, contained now, in a way that no one could undo. I stared at the jar for a moment, ensuring the seal was tight. Then, I turned to Thing, who had been sitting silently by my side, his usual disapproving gaze on me. "Don't let this thing out of your sight," I ordered, my tone flat but serious. Thing gave a nod, almost imperceptible, but I trusted him. He wouldn't fail me. I stood, the weight of the spell still lingering in the air. A strange feeling came over me, something I couldn't place. Then, as if to break the silence, Thing scuttled over to my bed, gesturing towards the door. His usual antics, tapping the wall, his expressive motions with the fingers, finally made sense as he pointed at me, then mimicked a gesture of a date. I shot him a dark look. "Don't get any ideas." But Thing wasn't deterred. He tapped the jar, then made the same motion again, as though trying to tell me something. "Good luck on your date," I muttered under my breath. I froze. A sense of realization hit me like a sudden gust of cold wind. Why was it that, despite everything, I had trusted Tyler? More than I'd ever trust anyone else? He was just as dangerous and unpredictable as anyone else at this school, but for some reason, I had let him in. I didn't say anything aloud, not even to Thing. But the thought lingered as I stared at the mason jar on my desk. The thought of trusting him, of accepting his help, it unsettled me. How easily I had let him tag along, how I had believed that he would actually help. Was that a mistake? I shook the thought from my mind. There was no room for doubt. Not when there were things to be done. And the sooner I finished this, the sooner I could get back to solving the mysteries that still gnawed at me. I had just finished preparing the ritual and placed the jar of ashes on my desk when Eden barged in, her usual enthusiasm cutting through the silence of my room. "Oh, my God, Wednesday. You're not gonna believe this. Some normie is waiting at the gate. Any guesses as to who his date is?" I glanced up from my desk. Eden was standing in the doorway, eyes wide, her expression caught somewhere between disbelief and excitement. My gaze fell to the clock. Tyler was waiting outside. I had forgotten the time, but now it was too late to back out. I needed to leave. Without acknowledging Eden's shocked look, I quickly grabbed my jacket and headed toward the door. "I need to get changed," I muttered, not bothering to explain further. Eden's eyes widened even more, but she didn't ask any more questions. I could feel her gaze following me, likely full of curiosity, but I couldn't afford to indulge her. There was no time for small talk. I stepped past her, barely sparing her a glance, and headed out the door. Eden's perspective. I stood frozen, staring at the pentagram drawn meticulously on the floor, its candles still flickering softly. Wednesday's mysterious rituals were never normal, but this was next level, even for her. What really caught my attention, though, was the way she had rushed out. It wasn't like Wednesday to act that quickly unless she had a reason. And then there was the fact that she hadn't even said a word to me. I blinked, finally snapping out of my thoughts, when I heard the faint hum of an engine outside. I stepped closer to the window and peeked out, just in time to spot Tyler's car waiting at the gates of Nevermore. My mind raced. What in the world? I hadn't realized Tyler was picking her up, but now it made sense. He had been around a lot lately, and Wednesday had been unusually cooperative. It wasn't like her to hang around a normie, yet there he was, waiting by his car. The whole situation seemed strange. Before I could analyze it further, I pulled out my phone and began typing furiously. OMG, Wednesday Addams just left to go on a date with a normie. I hit send before I had a chance to second-guess myself. This was huge. The gossip would be all over campus in no time, and I couldn't resist. As I sat back and stared at the window, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just witnessed something different. Wednesday was not the type to let anyone in, and yet, here she was, on a date with someone who was so different from her. It felt like I was watching a side of her I hadn't seen before. Curiosity gnawed at me, but I knew better than to try and follow. If Wednesday wanted to keep it private, she'd keep it private. Still, I couldn't shake the image of her and Tyler, walking off together, her usually cold demeanor, suddenly, uncharacteristically warm. I glanced back at my phone and saw my post already gathering likes and comments. Everyone was talking about it, some even asking who this mysterious normie was. I had my suspicions, of course, but I had no proof yet. As I put my phone down, I returned to the window, watching Tyler's car slowly pull away from the gate. What is Wednesday getting herself into? Wednesday's perspective. I walked out through the gates of Nevermore, my black and white branded top, jacket, and boots making a statement I didn't have to explain. Part of me still couldn't understand why I had agreed to this outing with Tyler. It seemed harmless enough, maybe even amusing. But was I playing along out of boredom? Or something else? That question seemed irrelevant when I spotted his car waiting by the curb. I couldn't help but want to mess with him a little. It was too easy. Jesus, I said suddenly, watching him jump in the driver's seat as if he was caught by some supernatural force. The look on his face was almost too entertaining. I climbed into the car and closed the door with a calm, practiced motion. Let's go, I said, letting the silence fill the air as we drove. He glanced at me briefly, awkwardly shifting gears. Sorry, I would have called you, but I didn't have your phone number, Tyler said, his voice apologetic. I don't have a phone, I responded flatly, looking out the window. I refuse to be a slave to technology. He paused, clearly unsure how to respond. I could feel his gaze on me, but I didn't turn to acknowledge it. Why should I? I had already said everything I needed to. But something nagged at me. Tyler was, in a strange way, persistent, almost as if he wasn't content with the easy answers. And that irritated me. Why was he trying so hard? So, where do you want to go? He asked, bringing me back from my thoughts. I didn't even have to think. A cemetery, or a haunted house would do. The air in the car thickened as I imagined the possibilities. Sure, I know a place. Minutes later, we arrived at an abandoned mansion. How fitting. I couldn't help but stare at it with my usual cynicism. What is this place? I asked, my voice laced with suspicion. It's the old Gates mansion. It's been abandoned for 30 years, after your father supposedly killed their son. Tyler handed me a police file, and I took it without hesitation. I'm not used to people engaging with me. Usually, they run when they see me coming across the street, I muttered, but it felt strangely hollow as the words left my lips. Was I really that scary? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't mind. People could look away all they wanted. You're not scary, Tyler said, breaking my chain of thought. You're just kind of kooky. I blinked. Kooky? That wasn't how I wanted to be described. I couldn't help the wry smirk that tugged at the corners of my mouth. I prefer spooky, I said, getting out of the car. Now, let's go inside. We're burning moonlight. I picked the lock on the gates effortlessly. It wasn't hard, not with the right set of skills. Tyler watched, probably expecting me to falter. but I didn't. When the gates creaked open, I stepped through, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and, what was it, nervousness? It was almost too easy to pretend that nothing bothered me. But what was this about? Why did I feel like I was trying to prove something? Where did you learn to pick locks? Tyler asked, curiosity in his voice. I was homeschooled until I was 8, I said, not breaking stride. My grandmother handled my curriculum. She taught me all the skills I needed to get in and out of trouble. That's great, he said, almost wistful. I wish my dad was like that. I wasn't sure what to make of that. My family wasn't perfect, far from it, but my grandmother had taught me to survive in a world that didn't make sense. When we entered the mansion, Tyler asked, "Aren't you going to ask me anything?" Like what? I responded flatly, scanning the dusty shelves. I don't know. Like, my likes and dislikes? He sounded unsure, and I couldn't fathom why he would care to share that with me. It seemed entirely unnecessary. Why would I ask you that? I said, still not understanding. Why should I waste my time asking about trivial things that didn't concern me? Tyler paused, frustrated. To get to know me. You don't care, or are you just playing with me? I felt a strange sensation, something akin to frustration and uncertainty. I couldn't quite place it, but it made my chest tighten slightly. I can't interpret your emotional Morse code. The words slipped out before I could stop them, and the honesty startled me. Why was I admitting that? Why did it matter? Tyler looked at me with something close to anger. You think this is funny? I sided with you instead of my friends. I even helped you steal that stupid book this afternoon. I stared at him, blinking as if I were seeing him for the first time. His words didn't fully register at first, but then they sank in. He was angry. I wasn't sure why, though. Did I hurt him? Or was he just confused by me? I was 12 when I got expelled for the 3rd time, I began, my voice flat. I blew up the school science fair because they gave out participation awards instead of a single trophy. That's when they decided I needed therapy. They noticed I was too sensitive, that I fixated on things, that I couldn't interpret emotional Morse codes. After more testing, they diagnosed me as neurodivergent with borderline psychopath. I've had countless therapists since. That must be rough, Tyler said softly. There was something in his voice that sounded almost genuine. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't know why. I'm sorry for not responding the way you wanted me to, I said, my words almost robotic. Why was I apologizing? Was it out of guilt? Or was it just easier than explaining that I couldn't feel what he expected me to feel? No, it's fine. I was just anxious. I thought you were playing with me, Tyler said, his voice softening, though it still carried a hint of doubt. I couldn't understand why his words seemed to cut deeper than they should have. Why was I even allowing him to affect me? Do you often look for trouble? I asked, my voice detached, but a small part of me was curious. Things have been hard since my mom died, Tyler confessed, his tone carrying an edge I didn't know how to respond to. I guess I wanted a distraction. I couldn't think of a response. What do you say to someone in pain? I had no clue. The words didn't come easily to me, and that discomfort settled in my chest. But before I could say anything, I spotted a crack in the bookshelf. Yahtzee, I murmured under my breath, and Tyler perked up beside me. Found something, he said, his voice full of excitement as the bookshelf creaked open to reveal an altar to Joseph Crackstone. Why would the Gates family have an altar to Joseph Crackstone? Tyler asked, his face full of confusion. Ancestral worship, I said flatly. We do the same thing in my family, except we don't communicate to worship them. I paused, staring at the altar. Blood will rain when I rise. Still thinking he was a peacekeeper? I never said he was a peacekeeper, Tyler replied, his voice tinged with curiosity. But how did history become so misrepresented? History is written by victors, I said, my gaze flicking toward the old relics. It's too bad their most outstanding relative died over 400 years ago. We left the house soon after, having found nothing else of interest. Tyler seemed determined to press on with the conversation. After your fencing tournament, you want to have a celebration? You know, if you win. I don't like social gatherings. We're being social, I said, cutting him off before he could get any ideas. Then how about just the two of us? Would that be doable? We'll see if we win, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Why did I say that? I'm planning to escape as soon as the tournament is over. I found the grimoire, my work here is done. Great, Tyler said, his voice brightening slightly. So you'll keep me posted. I don't have a phone, I said, almost as if the statement didn't matter. It's fine, he replied, grinning as though nothing could faze him. I'll just give you my number in case you decide to get one. I didn't respond. But somehow, despite myself, a part of me wondered if I might actually get one. Would I? Was that a choice I was ready to make? Like, comment, and subscribe to be notified for updates on this series.